There are plenty of former Chicago White Sox players in this year's postseason. Should you and I miss them? Better yet, do the Sox possibly have a better team if some of them never left? Let's discuss next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network, and I've also covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode, subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already, and also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, there are 14 former White Sox players currently in the postseason. Let's discuss if you and I should miss any of them, and also if the Sox would have been any good had they had some of these players still on the roster. Then another veteran skipper is rumored to be interested in the Sox opening. Let's discuss if Buck Showalter makes any sense to run the clubhouse. And finally, let's do a minor league Monday report as MLB Pipeline updated their top 100 prospects and the Arizona Fall League starts today. This episode is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. All right, so the biggest thing about 14 former White Sox players on the postseason team's active roster is it's another indictment that players thrive once they escape the Southside. Some of these former players have been gone for a while that, you really can't factor into how they would have impacted this historically awful 2024 season, but you certainly can miss them, and that's one of the things I want to discuss. But it's really hard to project if, those that have been gone for a while would have made any impact on the 2024 season. And especially since some of them are pitchers and starting pitchers. And, starting pitching wasn't the problem for the White Sox in 2024. And then there were those who were on the 2024 team that are now on, these active postseason rosters. And, well, not sure how much they would have helped considering two of them were DFA'd earlier in the season. And if you can't help a 121 losing team, I don't want you around. However, those two are thriving elsewhere. Goes back to, again, just how much of a mess the Sox were, and getting out of there can help someone's career. And another one is technically not a former White Sox player since he was just a non-roster invite to spring training, but also not picking him for the active roster hurt the team's bullpen in the long run, which was a huge, huge weakness this year. And again, just another indictment on the general manager for his inability to pick, those lower tiered players off the scrap heap and see if they could help you win some games and then be flipped at the deadline. And also that one pitcher getting dealt in spring training, again, could have helped the Sox in the long run based on his age. So first, leaving the Sox for the Yankees might be what anyone needs to have a functional career. At least Tim Hill can claim that. Hill is one of 6 former White Sox players on the Yankees postseason roster. What are the Yankees able to do better than the White Sox? Well, first, spend money. Second, you just throw on those pinstripes and suddenly you may realize this is what the big leagues are all about. Hill had a 5.87 ERA and a 2.22 whip before getting designated for assignment by the Sox. He goes to the Yankees. He posts a 2.05 ERA and a 1.02 whip. And I wonder if he was one of the veterans that was complaining about the Sox travel accommodations. I wonder if he just showed up to the White Sox in clubhouse and was like, what is going on? This is not the big leagues. And maybe that did have a factor on his season, but he was terrible for the White Sox. So in terms of missing him, I don't miss him. But again, it's an indictment on guys that come to the White Sox. They struggle, especially veterans. They get worse, they leave, and suddenly they find themselves again. But either way, seeing a veteran who is supposed to provide outs and a possible trade value for the Sox, he goes from awful to actually being counted on as one of the Yankees' left-handed outgetters for a contender just says how much players must love to leave the South Side. And I wouldn't say leave, escape. In a lot of ways, these guys are escaping the South Side. But what did the Yankees know about these players that the Sox don't? That they're able to get better versions of these players. Jake Cousins is a player that could have had a positive impact on this year's team. He was on the spring training roster, and the front office went with different options that in the long run helped the Sox blow 46 leads out of the bullpen. The Sox, remember, blew 54 leads overall, and I believe the number was 46 from the bullpen. So that's leads later in the game from the bullpen. Cousins was traded to the Yankees before the season started, and he posted a 2.37 ERA for New York. That would have led the team among qualified relievers for the White Sox, that 2.37 ERA. That just shows you how bad the White Sox bullpen was this year. And I believe I read a blurb that he was grateful to be traded to New York, and I wonder why. You know, he could have potentially been on a 121 loss season mess to the New York Yankees. I mean, talk about like that's going from the outhouse to the penthouse right there. Duke Ellis, Pedro Grifol's favorite toy this season, somehow made the roster. First, it shows you how the Yankees always find a way to sneak a specific role player onto their roster. And second, they know when to use them. I mean, Grifol loved playing this guy during his brief call-up with the White Sox. I believe he was like the 84th ranked prospect to Sox 1500. I don't even think the future Sox guys had him ranked even close to their top 30. You know, MLB Pipeline didn't even have him anywhere near it. But Grifol, the moment he came up, he just loved getting him in pinch running situations. And that's fine if you're a contender, but not a last place team. I mean, I think the front office just promoted him briefly with the intention of just having a body while dealing with injuries, and then also sending like, kind of a signal to some of these other prospects that, hey, I would take this guy at AA who's barely hitting and can just run fast than what you guys are producing. So step it up. But Grifol kept using him in pinch running situations that you wanted to look at him and be like, he shouldn't even be here. Duke Ellis should not be playing. And your offense is not good enough to get him home. And I do believe that Ellis did get caught in one. I want to say it was the Blue Jays game where he got caught trying to steal second. That did kill a rally. So it's just like, why were you using this guy? But the Yankees offense is good enough to get him home, and that's why he's on the roster. Carlos Rodon, you can miss him. I miss him, but he's been gone since 2021. And I can't tell if he would have helped this year's team. I mean, obviously, it can't hurt to have a guy who, had a pretty solid season, started off sluggish, then faced the White Sox, and suddenly, hey, he's much better. But again, I can't tell you if he would have helped because, he last pitched for the Sox in 2021, and he was always hurt for the team. I mean, I do think he would have helped in 2022, but remember, starting pitching was not the problem for the White Sox this year. So, yes, you could miss Carlos Rodon, and I do. Even though he was usually hurt, I still liked what he brought to the table. I can't really project if he would have helped the team. Definitely in 2022, because once he left, it could have been nice to have him, especially how he did bounce back with the San Francisco Giants quite nicely. Tommy Canale, he has been on the Sox since 2017. Ian Hamilton barely pitched for the Sox and was last here in 2020. So still, missing out on being patient with Hamilton, maybe, because the Sox went with, say, like guys like Jake Diekman does speak to how it was never a good idea for the previous leadership to spend so much money on the bullpen. But Hamilton missed some time, so I don't think you'd really miss him, but he is 29. All right, Michael Kopech, he is thriving on the Dodgers, and there is some argument that believes he should have never been traded in the first place. But since he was blowing saves, he did contribute to some losses this year, clearly. It took switching agents for him to even realize, maybe I should listen to my pitching plan. Maybe I should listen to these White Sox coaches. Maybe they might know what they're talking about. At least some of them. At least Brian Bannister. Maybe if Brian Bannister tells me that I need to throw my slider a little bit more, maybe I should do that. So this narrative that he had to escape to Chicago to become dominant, I just think is false too, because look at his last 5 outings with the Sox. They were amazing. He threw an immaculate inning. But the problem I have with the Sox, though, and the reason why I kind of miss Kopech is, and it's well documented on the show, everydayers would know, they didn't get enough for him in return. Miguel Vargas is terrible, and 2 other minor leaguers have immense potential, but are years away from helping. And he should not have been traded. He should have been traded separately from Eric Fetty and Tommy Pham in that ill-fated 3-team deal at the trade deadline. Speaking of trades, I don't miss Tanner Banks, since the Sox did get something of value relative to his market for him at the deadline. William Bergolla, he's a Sox 15th best prospect. I know he's at, A-ball, but high ceiling kid. And to get a high ceiling kid for a lefty who had an ERA over 4, I'll take it and wish Tanner well. Jose Ruiz is another example of a player escaping the South Side and finding success. But remember, he was a low leverage arm who had a 4.69 ERA in 2022. And he started, his first 4 games in 2023, he had a 22.09 ERA in 4 appearances. Goes to Arizona, though, does better, and then he moves on to Philadelphia, and he finishes the year with a 371, moves on to Philadelphia in 2020, this season, and finishes the year with a 3.71 ERA. He's 29, so it would have been not a bad idea for him to still be on the South Side, but the context of how he was let go last year, the Sox were still trying to contend before everything fell apart. So hindsight, really, it's hard to have 2020 vision there. Dylan Cease, another player you can definitely miss. Him being on this year's team, though, I don't know if it would have mattered much in the win-loss standings. Maybe they don't break the 121 losses, but again, starting pitching was that was the one thing that was fine this year. Outside of, the few Mike Clevenger starts, the few times that Chris Flexen got roughed up when he put batters on, because that's all he ever did was put guys on, and then you just had to hope and pray that they wouldn't come across home plate. But otherwise, that was not the problem. I mean, Cease was technically easily replaced in the ace category by Garrett Crochet. Now, maybe the Sox don't have an AL tying 21-game losing streak, as Cease would have not been on an innings limit. I mean, because one minor detail, that 21-game losing streak, was Crochet was only pitching 4 innings by then. So it's hard to leverage your ace to stop those types of losing streaks. I mean, and think about it. Crochet did stop a 14-game losing streak earlier in the season because he wasn't on that pitching innings limit. Remember, Steve Stone called it. We're going to beat Boston tomorrow night because Garrett Crochet's on the mound. And guess what happened? They beat Boston. But when your top pitcher can't go into even qualifying for a win territory, that you might get a 21-game losing streak. But Cease being moved had to happen, as the Sox weren't going to pay him. His market was at its highest. And again, you and I can discuss how that makes the Sox look cheap and why it'll be hard to see Crochet get moved this offseason, because it's going to likely happen to him too. But at least the Sox got some valuable future pieces who can have a positive impact on the team in the long run to mitigate him being traded. Drew Thorpe showed promise. Might be that right-handed version of Mark Burley as an ace. Iro Iriarte could be a good starting pitcher for the Sox, or he can be an arm that the bullpen is built around. And I do have to mention Fernando Tatis Jr. He was a former Sox prospect, traded for James Shields. Oh, gosh. Although it would have been nice more maybe to have Tatis Jr. during the contention window than right now. And the PED suspension brings some suspicion on just how elite he truly was during that time, obviously. But still, 25. And now that he's probably going to be clean, once you get caught, you hope you don't get caught again and you're not cheating. But wouldn't you want his clean bat in the lineup right now? I don't miss Tommy Pham or Paul DeYoung, considering it turns out Pham was just taking away at bats from Dominic Fletcher. I mean, I love Pham. Trust me, I love Tommy Pham's time here. This thinking he could be flipped at the deadline for something better than the Mets got for him at last year's deadline was just terrible thinking. Dominic Fletcher has shown that his glove is already elite. But when he returned, he obviously struggled to hit big league pitching. And you got to think that not being given enough runway did hurt his development at the plate. Paul DeYoung hit home runs, but also was terrible in the field. So I'm glad the Sox moved him to the Royals. And really, the Sox, again, would have probably been on the path to 121 losses had some of these guys still been on the team, because I just mentioned a bunch of these guys that were on the team that were still helping the team lose. So I don't think the Sox were on the precipice of having at least a 90-loss team if they had some of these guys still here. Well, another name is being rumored for the Sox manager job. Let's discuss Buck Showalter's interest in the job and why it would be awful for the team next on Locked On White Sox. Hey, for most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a Luka, Ellie, or Mahomes rookie card just isn't in the cards. As a kid, I loved collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. And thanks to slab packs from arena.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card that I listed was a hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. And if you're a serious collector or even a casual one who's looking for a value card now and again, Arena Club is the place for you. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, and or auction. The Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, and transparent with full grade rationale provided and an explanation of how your card was scored. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform you have to check out. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockedonmlb and use code LockedOnMLB. That's arenaclub.com/lockedonmlb, code LockedOnMLB for 10% off your first purchase. And welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, follow or subscribe to the show on wherever you get your podcasts, as Locked On White Sox is available at places such as Apple and Spotify. And again, if you can't watch me on YouTube here in the flesh, rocking the Bears stuff today because Bears got a huge win, take me with you while you're sitting in traffic on the Kennedy, or, commuting into the train on the Metro, or, you're needing to do some yard work. Take me with you. I'm here again to inform you, to entertain you, to challenge you, to reinforce you. And also, if you've checked out on the White Sox, you occasionally want to check in, I'm here for you. I'm sticking around watching this train wreck for you. All right, so I agree with the Athletics' Keith Law's assessment that Buck Showalter would be awful for the Sox if they pick him as their next manager. And yes, I am turning up my nose on a 4-time manager of the year who's actually speculated to actually be interested in the job. You would be like, why are you doing this? Well, I have my reasons. One, I don't see him being a partner that Chris Getz is looking for to get things turned around. And I'll get to that in a second. But also, teams always seem to do better in the standings once he's gone. And he usually does his best work with veteran rosters. And he's not exactly known to be a proven teacher of the game. As Law points out, he can actually get in the way of player development. And next year is just going to be completely about player development, since the Sox have announced they're not spending any money. They're going to go with their young players, which fine. That's what I want them to do. That's what I wanted them to do the moment they went 3-22. All right, so credit to Joe Binder of Sox on 35th. Again, soxon35th.com. Check them out. They're great. I've had Jordan Lazowski on the show. I mean, they're great people. They're awesome. They're great Sox fans. They're great content creators for the White Sox, so check them out. But Joe Binder, he found this little nugget in Law's live chat on October 4th as someone asked him about the Sox opening. This is what he has. I wrote about their future in a piece last week on the 23rd. There's pitching coming. Getz is trying to overhaul some areas of the organization that have been stagnated for years. Simply having Kenny Williams out of the picture helps too. One thing I heard that I would hate for them is that Buck Showalter is angling for the manager's job. Given his propensity to interfere in player development, he's the wrong hire for that position. All right. So the one thing that I think Showalter would do well is he would bring discipline to the clubhouse. I mean, he's a very well-known disciplinarian. He's got a binder full of rules. There'd be structure, and we've known the Sox clubhouse has just become a chaotic mess under Pedro Grifol, and it became a chaotic mess too under Tony La Russa. But I'm not sure that that's what Chris Getz is looking for. I think he wants more of a harmonious, everyone's getting along type clubhouse. Because, I mean, obviously, a good clubhouse culture is one thing that General Manager Chris Getz is definitely interested in. But I don't think he wants a drill sergeant. I don't think he wants, people to come in and be like, all right, this is how you're going to do it. I think it's more, hey, this is how we want to play things. This is how we want to, get better, kumbaya type stuff. And also look at how the Orioles just decayed under Showalter. I mean, they went from, getting into the playoffs to winning 47 games in his last year. Now, a lot of that was dysfunctional ownership that didn't embrace analytics. A GM who butted heads with Showalter. And that's kind of sounds like a team that sounds familiar to me. Oh, yeah, that sounds like the White Sox right now. There was a lot of dysfunction. And now that the Orioles got a better GM, got a new owner, I'm so jealous of them. But the Orioles decayed so badly under Showalter that why would you want to potentially invite that back in after your team decayed under Tony La Russa and Pedro Grifol? Why would you want to do that again? Now he has had some success, but it's always usually with talented teams. You give him bad players, he's going to make things better, as evidenced by, again, the dying days of his Royals tenure, or how the Rangers never did much under him. And also, again, does anyone notice that teams usually get better once he's gone? The Yankees, they won the World Series in 1996 after he left after the 95 season, after George Steinbrenner said, I don't want to deal with you anymore. Same with the Diamondbacks in 2001. Bob Brenly walks in, and I remember reading a story. I think it was in Sports Illustrated. Showalter had this binder full of rules, and the players just couldn't stand it anymore. Showalter, Brenly walks in, he's got 3 rules written on a napkin, and I think one of them was play winning baseball. But think about that. Teams keep winning World Series after he leaves. At least, the evidence of 2. And the New York Mets, who, owner Steve Cohen said it wasn't his fault, but, he was given a very talented roster, and it completely decayed under him too. And look at that. The Mets could potentially win the World Series because, they did beat the Brewers. Now, to be fair, Showalter does have a track record of turning things around, but he's going to be 69 next season. And that's not to say the game has passed him by. He has shown, unlike a former Hall of Fame manager, that he can adapt. He's been obviously in the game recently, but I prefer a younger voice in the clubhouse to help build up this franchise and the vision Getz has. Like, if you go to the Chicago White Sox podcast on Friday, Sean Anderson, who I'm hoping to get on the show, I think next week, he discussed an interview that Skip Schumacher, for example, had, where he talks about kind of like, how do you build teams? How do you develop them? And it sounds very modern. It sounds more in line with Chris Getz. I'm not saying that yes, I do want Schumacher to be the manager. He's one of my guys, one of my top 5 guys that I'd love for them to have. But he just sounded more like, this is the vision. This sounds like new age thinking that the White Sox desperately need. And like it or not, you and I have to hope that Getz can overhaul the franchise. I don't trust him, but I got to accept it because Jerry Reinsdorf isn't firing him anytime soon. Jerry Reinsdorf isn't going to wake up tomorrow and be like, oh my gosh, I conducted the worst GM search in the history of known to man. I'm going to fix it all. No, we got to go with Chris Getz. And like I said, he's shown flashes here and there, but he's got to meet this moment. And I think hiring Showalter is not meeting the moment. And I do agree with him. He needs a partner. Not another veteran voice telling him this is how things should be done. Because I could just see that right now. I could just see a lot of tension and a lot of conflict. He needs someone on the cutting edge, open to new ideas with open thinking. And Showalter has normally been this is a my way or a highway type of guy. At least that's how I've always read about him. And again, the other reason why I'm just opposed to him is the timing doesn't add up. I would actually rather go with Grady Sizemore than Showalter, again, based on the timing. You're not going to win a lot of games right now. You're rebuilding. Why not go then, again, in that case, go with a younger guy like Grady Sizemore, who's already established a rapport with these younger players, than bring in an outsider like Showalter, and he has, I could see him creating another shadow GM dynamic. I could, now granted, I'd rather have the manager in charge, but at the same time, the last time we had the manager in charge, it was Tony La Russa. Didn't work out so well. The team decayed and died. I want a manager, obviously, to be in charge of the clubhouse, in charge of winning the game in front of him, not in charge of the entire organization. I want the manager to lead in terms of communicating what it is needed to win the game and, obviously communicate that to the front office to make sure a roster is constructed in that way. But I don't also want it to be, like what they did for Pedro Grifol and, hey, let's get that fast team. I don't want that. I would prefer, obviously, too, somebody younger. And I'm not trying to be like, elder stereotype away. I think if you're going to go with a young team, go with a younger voice. Go with someone that, at least has been like, even I would say between Showalter and Sizemore. Sizemore's actually played a lot recently. That's another thing. I would like somebody with some actual major league playing experience to be the manager of this team. And Buck Showalter never played in the majors. Remember when Ozzie Guillen ripped him? But again, if this was 2021, I'd be fine if the Sox considered Showalter. But it's not. It's 2024, and they're coming off 121 losses. It's just not the right time to go with Buck Showalter. Well, it is Monday, and let's actually do a minor league Monday report since MLB Pipeline updated its top 100 rankings, and the Arizona Fall League is about to start that I want to talk about next on Locked On White Sox. This episode of Locked On White Sox is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, yeah, with hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. You might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival cities during the postseason. The Guardians and the Tigers, they're facing each other in the ALDS, and if you want to root against both teams and maybe taking the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or tour Motown, use Booking.com to book your next stay. And hey, maybe you want to root against the Kansas City Royals and get some Kansas City barbecue and check out the Negro League Museum. Again, use booking.com to find your next stay in that city. Booking.com can help you book a stay that's close to your home team's or rival stadium. No matter what team you're rooting for this postseason, booking.com can make you a fan of any U.S. city. From hotels that overlook the stadiums to family-friendly resorts to cute bed and breakfast stays, booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball's rivals. Booking.com, booking.yeah. And hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. FanDuel is amazing for parlays, props, and futures. Now, obviously, they have the traditional over-under, the money line, the plus 3.5, that type of stuff. But where where I've always found FanDuel to be great, parlays, props, and futures. A hot parlay FanDuel has going right now is Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt, Xavier Worthy, and Chris Olave anytime touchdown in tonight's Monday Night Football game. Right now, that's at plus 480, plus 4,000, plus 4,882. So $10 on that. Hitting is $488.26 in winnings if that hits. A good value line is the Mets plus 420 to win the NLCS. Any team that has beaten the Milwaukee Brewers in the playoffs has gone on to the World Series, and the Mets are plus 1,000 to win the whole thing according to FanDuel. You can always bet who's going to hit a home run in tonight's matchups. Jose Ramirez is at plus 560 to go yard tonight against the Detroit Tigers. That's FanDuel.com. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Shout out to all my everydayers who stick with me this long. We're building a great community on YouTube. We can also build a great community, via audio on places such as Apple and Spotify. Hope you had a great weekend. Mine was kind of low key. Didn't really do a whole lot. Took my niece, my daughter, and my wife to the China Lights at Banner Botanical Gardens up in Milwaukee. It was really neat to see. If you want to take a day trip, I suggest coming up. It's a pretty neat display. And then yesterday, watch that Bears win. Why do you think I'm wearing my Bears stuff? It's always a good day when the Bears win. All right, so Colson Montgomery's terrible AAA season has him continuing to slide down the top 100 rankings and the Sox top 30 rankings. He's still considered the team's top hitting prospect, but he has tumbled out of the league's top 25 rankings according to MLB Pipeline's updated top 100. He still has a chance to make a case that he is worthy of being considered an elite talent in the Arizona Fall League, which kicks off today. Montgomery, to me, is the player you want to check out for updates on, or if you are in Arizona, swing by and watch. His rough 2024 in AAA set him down 12 spots in the MLB Pipeline's updated top 100. He went from 25 to 37. A 214, 329, 381 slash line and 18 home runs in 130 games. Yeah, that's going to do that. But he did have a strong September. So the hope is he has a strong fall, much like last year, to renew hopes that maybe he could be Corey Seager. Because right now he's looking more like Paul DeYoung. Like I think the Sox could call him up at any point next year, and he could probably hit some home runs. But he could probably also hit 190 while he's doing that in that way. So they really did mishandle him. And I've had, guests on before saying that he probably should have started the year at AA, then moved up to AAA, because this is technically his first full year where he's been healthy in the minor leagues. The Sox still have 4 players in the top 100. Left-handed pitchers Noah Schultz, he's 16. Hagen Smith is 30th, and catcher Edgar Caro is 59. Now, in terms of other players in the Arizona Fall League for the Sox, pitcher Grant Taylor is considered one of the underrated players. He's the team's 6th-ranked prospect. An injury limited him to just 5 games this year. So it's good to see that he's healthy enough, that he's going to get some innings, that he will still get some developmental time, especially in the Arizona Fall League, which is usually the best of the best prospects from each team, or at least prospects that teams are very hopeful on. And they go obviously play a 6-week season. The Sox are also going to send 7 more players to the Glendale Desert Dogs. So the AFL only has 6 teams, and Glendale will be made up of the prospects from the Sox, Reds, Cardinals, Dodgers, and Phillies. Peyton Polite, the team's 27th ranked prospect, he will be there. Showed really good growth as a reliever. Once they moved him to a reliever this year, I'm very hopeful that again he could be another arm that the Sox can build their next good bullpen around. And again, you want the Sox to be building bullpens around cheap arms. Pitchers Eric Adler, Andrew Dahlquist, Anthony Hoopy Tuatuina, who was briefly the team's top 30 prospect, will also be there. Anthony was the guy that they got for Robbie Grossman from the Texas Rangers. And yeah, he was briefly in their top 30. Obviously fell out once they started ranking this year's draft prospects. First baseman Tim Elko, outfielder DJ Gladney, and catcher Michael Turner will also be in Arizona for the Sox. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Discuss, hear about the Fall Classic from Sully, who has it covered every single day. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I'll be back tomorrow. Now, I'm trying to arrange an interview with SoxMachine.com's Josh Nelson, but might have to go with a different date, as a schedule conflict could be in the way on my end. So if I'm able to get him on the show, he's going to be on. If my scheduling conflict, I can't clear it up, I will kick off day one of reviewing the 63 players who suited up for the Sox this past season. Feel free to leave comments about today's topics regarding former Sox in the postseason, Buck Showalter's interest in the Sox manager job, and a minor league Monday report. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.